Fang Shan, often called Lubu, starts our tale with a shocking act. He kills his own godfather. As he utters an apology, he implies his godfather's death was crucial for his ascent to power. Lubu doesn't stop there, though. To prevent any future vendettas, he takes out all of his godfather's close associates. When he fills in the chief counselor about all that's happened, the counselor not only approves but also rewards Lubu with the Fang Tian Halbert, a legendary horse named Chi Tu, and even takes on the role of Lubu's godfather. Lubu then sweeps through battle after battle, claiming victory each time. But his winning streak ends abruptly when he's betrayed and arrested by his newfound godfather. He's taken before a gathering of generals and without much ceremony is killed. But his story doesn't end there. Upon death, Lubu awakens in a strange realm, a binary space, and hears a voice declaring he's forever doomed to be a loser. Just as suddenly, he finds himself back in the past, a day prior to the Battle of Sishui, with a headache from that haunting voice. He runs into Ho Chang, a feudal lord, who posits that perhaps Lubu is destined for leadership, which could explain the voices. Lubu laughs at this, noting the voice labeled him a failure, not a ruler. Their conversation is interrupted by a horseman, Hujin, who's angered by Lubu's casual demeanor amidst looming danger. Hujin, feeling his authority is being challenged, warns Lubu of dire consequences. In response, Lubu and his men draw their weapons, reminding Hujin that those who have threatened him in the past now rest in their graves. Just as tensions peak, another rider, Huashan, intervenes. He suggests focusing on their true enemies rather than infighting. Lubu jests that while it'd have been an opportune day for rebellion, his adversaries are simply too cowardly. The banter continues as they march towards Sishui. Lubu comically instructs his men to laugh at Hujin whenever they spot him. Later that evening at Iki Pass, Hujin reveals to the gathered assembly that their opponent, Sun Jian, has a formidable army of 50,000, while at their side, the Siliang army boasts 150,000. An advisor named Zhao Sen flatters Hujin, claiming they could easily overpower Sun Jian given their numbers. Lubu, not one to hold his tongue, berates Hujin for his inexperience and incompetence. This earns him the sharp end of Huashin's spear. Yet Lubu remains undeterred, cautioning them to not underestimate Sun Jian. In response to Hujin's challenge to devise a strategy, Lubu proposes sending scouts to inspect Sun Jian's camp setup, ensuring they aren't walking into a trap, while the bulk of their forces would launch a direct assault. Lubu, having had enough of Hujin's arrogance about easily besting Sun Jian with sheer numbers and feeling that such tactics would tarnish his reputation, makes a bold declaration. He won't let his Bing army participate in a full-blown war. Instead, Hujin can march into what Lubu believes will be his doom. With Lubu preparing his soldiers for a night raid on Sun Jian's main camp, Weisha relays news that Hujin has already led his forces into battle. Unperturbed, Lubu instructs his soldiers to rest easy, confident in his belief that Hujin's recklessness will cost him his life. But as Lubu slumbers, a haunting voice revisits him, proclaiming his fate a failure. He's whisked away into a digital realm, confronted by a 4D life simulator system that promises a life filled with endless possibilities. Apparently, a glitch casts the system into this 3D space. It tempts Lubu, stay and reshape his life or return to his reality. Curiosity wins, and Lubu selects to dive into the simulation. Instantly, the scene shifts to a house in the Han Dynasty. Lubu reincarnates as a baby. By age 7, he's dealing with local bullies who taunt him, calling him a human-skinned monster. Despite a rough confrontation that leaves him worse for wear, a system screen pops up, revealing he's in a farmer simulation and has only earned a meager reputation point from the brawl. Lubu discerns that he can change his status through significant feats, and he's still wrestling with whether this life is genuine or merely a dream. Given his impoverished circumstances, Lubu decides mastering martial arts might increase his status. As he dives into rigorous training, his father berates him for neglecting familial duties, especially since their already struggling household can't support Lubu's newfound food-consuming regimen. Lubu, who recalls from his past life effortlessly lifting thrice the weight he currently struggles with, laments his current weakness. But time moves on, and Lubu finds solace in the little victories, like increasing his strength by chopping wood. When Lubu turns 9, joy and hardship collide. He gains a baby sister. However, overhearing his father considering selling her due to the age-old belief that raising girls is a burden, Lubu vehemently protests. Vowing to consume less and even work extra, Lubu tries to ensure she isn't sold off. This stubborn determination isn't for naught. His intellect grows, aiding him in persuading his father to keep the family whole. From then on, Lubu, who never farmed in his previous life, toils every day, slowly learning the art of agriculture. Lubu quickly took to farming. As he dug his hands into the soil, he began predicting the weather, choosing fertilizers based on land conditions, and even transformed 2 acres of barren family land into fertile grounds. The villagers couldn't help but chatter. The Lu family's worst plot had now become rich soil, all thanks to Lubu. His reputation in the village jumped up a notch, but to him, it felt minimal. He pondered over the flourishing land and wondered why his wealth hadn't seen a similar increase. Approaching his father, Lubu raised a burning question. Why doesn't the chief pay taxes? His father shed light on the grim reality. The chief squeezed every coin out of the village's impoverished residents. That's the very reason their lives were perpetually tight, scraping biannually. This chief, as Lubu learned, not only reaped the benefits without working for them, but also double-dipped, collecting taxes for himself and the government. The chief's grip was so firm that if Lubu's family didn't hand over a chunk of their harvest, there was a lurking threat. His mother and sister could be claimed as tax. This ignited fury in Lubu. He thought, is there no hope for hardworking farmers like us? Frustration built up, and he made an inner vow. Even if he didn't reclaim his past glory as a general, he wouldn't let anyone walk over him or his family. A few years whizzed by, and Lubu, now 12, showcased his budding archery skills. An arrow, released with precision, took down a sprinting rabbit. But as Lubu tried to store his prize, he was met with a new obstacle, Lu Hong, the village chief. He wanted a tax on Lubu's hunted goods, claiming orders from the imperial court. Lubu's temper flared. Why would the imperial court interfere in commoners' daily life? This retort riled up the chief, who saw it as a rebellious stance, threatening Lubu and his family's safety. As tension escalated, Lubu's father intervened, urging his son to part with half the hunt. Yet Lubu's rage bubbled over. Drawing close to the chief, Lubu brandished his knife, giving the illusion of attacking him. In truth, he slaughtered another rabbit, staging it to intimidate the chief. Fear struck, Lubu warned the chief against future harassment, but the confrontation took a toll. His father was furious, scolding Lubu for jeopardizing their hard-earned stability. Lubu's argument was that showing weakness would only embolden the chief, suggesting they could even overthrow him and distribute his lands to the villagers. As tempers flared, his father's patience snapped, and he gave Lubu a resounding slap, deciding they'd abandon their home for safety. But then tragedy. Cries alerted them to their house ablaze with Lubu's mother and sister trapped inside. In the chaotic aftermath, father and son, already emotionally torn, had to endure bystanders' cold remarks, saying they got what they deserved. The ashes of their life smoldered in front of them, a testimony to the heavy price of defiance. The voices ringing in the air were those of the villagers, mocking and ridiculing the Lu family. The words were laced with derision for daring to challenge the chief. Lubu's fury surged like a beast breaking free from its cage, and he couldn't control the wild anger coursing through his veins. He grabbed his bow, seeing the villagers as murderers deserving death. But his father, panic-stricken, pleaded with him to stop. "You've already destroyed our house. Don't lose yourself to this madness," he cried. Lubu's eyes were aflame, his face contorted with rage. He snarled back at his father, "Shut up. I'll handle this my way." His father's heart sank, for he no longer saw his son in front of him, but a monster driven by unbridled rage. Without hesitation, Lubu shot an arrow at one of the villagers who had just slandered their family, watching as the man collapsed lifelessly. He was reminded of how his mother had loved him, a warmth he never knew in his previous life. The memories fueled his anger, and he aimed at the fleeing crowd, his arrows finding their mark again and again. Each kill seemed to erode his humanity, the monster within gaining a tighter grip. Images of his little sister, a reflection of an innocent daughter from his past life, flashed in his mind, only to shatter with each arrow's release. One arrow lodged in the leg of a bully, who then fell, screaming in agony. Approaching the wounded man, Lubu listened as the truth spilled from his lips. It was the chief's doing, the order to set the fire. The admission did nothing to quell Lubu's wrath. With a swift swing of his knife, he ended the man's life, blood gushing from a fatal wound. Revenge clouded Lubu's thoughts as he stalked towards the village, leaving a trail of corpses behind. Fear spread like wildfire among the villagers. Some fled, others bravely faced him, but all felt they were confronting a monstrous entity, not a mere child. A gruesome battle ensued, Lubu slashing throats, showing no remorse or mercy. When his blade dulled from the relentless bloodshed, he reverted to his arrows, piercing 2 more villagers. Finally, only one man stood defiant, cursing Lubu and his family. In response, Lubu inflicted a slow, agonizing death. The village fell into an eerie silence, save for Lubu's footsteps and the fresh dead he left in his wake. His final destination loomed ahead, the house of Chief Lu Han. As he entered, memories of his warning to the chief played in his head, a grim prophecy now fulfilled. He had slaughtered the chief's entire family, sparing neither child nor woman. The chief, trembling in terror, fell to his knees, begging for mercy, but Lubu's only response was a cold farewell before slashing the chief's throat. A system message appeared, notifying Lubu of a 15-point increase in reputation, but his intellect had dropped to 0, consumed by revenge. He then set the village aflame, mirroring the devastation wrought upon his home. Meanwhile, his father was consumed by guilt, lamenting that he had raised a monster, blaming himself for the deaths of his wife and daughter. Lubu, somber and silent, approached his father, dropping to his knees. His father urged him to flee, as the surviving villagers would surely report the massacre. Tears welled in Lubu's eyes as he begged his father to leave with him, but his father's voice was filled with weary resignation. He spoke of his wife and daughter's labor, their lost opportunities for joy, and the life they never got to enjoy. The weight of their absence pressed down on Lubu's father. Feeling he needed to join them in whatever lay beyond, he yelled at Lubu, pleading for him to flee the scene. In a gesture of deep reverence, Lubu touched his forehead to the ground, honoring his father's command. As he began to retreat, he heard the all too distinct sound of his father's life ending. Though he knew the gravity of what his father had done, Lubu forced himself to keep moving, tears streaming down his face. Embracing his father's final directive, he broke into a run. Hours or perhaps moments later, Lubu found shelter in an old deer-licked building. There he lit a fire, his thoughts consumed by the recent horrors. Come dawn, guards approached the location, noticing the remnants of a recently quelled fire. They immediately concluded that Lubu, the infamous village butcher, was nearby. They scoured the surrounding buildings, yet unbeknownst to them, Lubu was perched on a rooftop, bow at the ready. Without hesitation, he loosed an arrow that found its mark in a guard's neck. The fallen guard's comrade tried to alert the rest, but before he could convey Lubu's position, another arrow pierced his chest. Chaos ensued as another guard spotted Lubu on the rooftop, shouting out his position. That guard tried to counter Lubu with his own arrow, but Lubu deftly sidestepped it and retaliated, injuring the guard. The wounded guard warned his brethren of Lubu's uncanny archery prowess, urging caution. Seeking a better vantage point, some guards took to the rooftops. In response, Lubu descended and dashed into the nearby forest. Inside, the guards chattered about an incoming storm and the need to apprehend Lubu before the weather turned. Lubu, hidden on a treetop, let an arrow fly. It met its target, prompting return fire. He dodged the onslaught with nimble leaps and launched himself from the tree, his landing cushioned by another successful shot. One of the guards sneered at Lubu's tenacity, comparing him to a pesky cockroach. Realizing they were outmatched, the guard used a unique whistle arrow to signal for backup. The sharp whistle reverberated through the forest, and Lubu, recognizing the call for reinforcements, felt the walls closing in on him. Suddenly, an arrow whizzed past him. Startled, Lubu realized that they had him cornered. A quick glance revealed 2 guards poised on a tree, arrows nocked. Then the skies opened, pouring rain that drenched everything. The guards took this as an advantage, letting loose more arrows. Lubu tried to gather his waning strength, determined not to go down without a fight. Despite being outnumbered and surrounded, he lunged at his adversaries, defiantly screaming. Yet before he could reach them, another volley brought him to his knees. The guards circled him, launching arrow after arrow until Lubu could no longer move. The head guard surveying the scene coldly informed Lubu that he was bound for execution. When asked if he harbored any regrets, a bloody Lubu spat back, defiant to the end, affirming that he'd made his choice and would stand by it until his last breath. The guard shook his head, expressing that it was such a shame. He mused that if Lubu had shown this tenacity at the country's border, he might have achieved monumental things and brought immense pride to his lineage. The guard leader unsheathed a sharp blade, wishing Lubu a more peaceful existence in his next life, and with a swift motion, separated Lubu's head from his body. As Lubu's detached head lay on the ground, lingering thoughts filled his mind. Was this really inevitable? Could different choices have changed his fate? Suddenly, his eyes fluttered open, revealing an unfamiliar space known as the system space. In this place, Lubu was whole again. The system chimed in, congratulating him on successfully navigating his first simulation. As it began computing his performance, a flurry of thoughts consumed Lubu. Was he still alive? The system relayed his actions back to him. His act of annihilating the entire Louvre village earned him notoriety on the path of crime, which landed him a final rank of level 1. His untimely death meant he couldn't escalate his crimes, hence a single point. However, his defiant spirit inspired future generations, granting him 15 reputation points. His tumultuous life meant 0 wealth points. His hunting days gave him a nimble physique, boosting his power score to 10. But his reliance on brute force over brains gave him an intellect score of 0. His end result? A C grade. After tallying his scores, the system awarded him 28 simulation credits and a choice of 3 bonuses: basic carpentry skills, tailoring abilities, or foundational heart enhancement. Lubu opted for the heart enhancement. He soon felt a rush, an invigorating sensation around his heart. When next his eyes opened, he was back in his bed in reality. Lubu quickly inquired with Wei Shu, his wife's brother, about the commotion outside. Wei Shu explained that Hyujin had taken General Huashan for a surprise raid on Sun Jian's primary encampment. To Lubu's astonishment, only minutes had elapsed in the real world, though he felt he'd spent 13 years in the simulation. Springing to action, he ordered Wei Shu to rally their troops. Wei Shu, a bit confused, mentioned that Lubu had previously instructed the soldiers to stand down. Lubu, however, was resolute, saying they were about to shift history's trajectory. Meanwhile, Hyujin's forces were strategizing near Sun Jian's camp. Huaqianong informed Hyujin that Sun Jian's troops appeared relaxed and off guard. Delighted by this intel, Hyujin laid out his plan. Huaqianong would ambush Sun Jian's camp from a side entrance, while Hyujin would seal off the main gate. He smugly noted that since Lubu was still seemingly resting, the victory's accolades would be his alone. Huaqianong approached the side entrance with his platoon, sensing something amiss due to the eerie quiet. He couldn't back out now. Resolutely, he signaled his men to charge. Sun Jian's sentry spotted them, raising the alarm. One guard rushed to sound the drums, but a flurry of arrows cut him down, successfully neutralizing the guards. Huaqianong began his infiltration. Amid the torchlit camp, Huaqianong and his platoon sensed something amiss. There wasn't much pushback, and it felt too easy. Suddenly, a soldier reported that the camp appeared empty. Realizing they had walked right into a trap, Huaqianong yelled for his men to pull back. But they were a moment too late. A flurry of flaming arrows came hurtling down, igniting the camp. The structures, already doused in oil, burst into flames. Huaqianong rallied his troops, reminding them that their leader, Hyujin, was nearby guarding the main gate. From his vantage point, Hyujin witnessed the blazing inferno. His soldiers urged him to assist Huaqianong, but sensing the unfavorable tides, Hyujin ordered a hasty retreat. Instead of a coordinated pullback, it was every man for himself. As Hyujin fled, Sun Jian's concealed forces sprang from the forest, boxing in Hyujin's unprepared men. Hyujin might have felt a momentary relief escaping the immediate battleground, but his heart raced as General Zhu Derong of Sun Jian's army shouted his name, charging at him. With Zhu's horse outpacing his own, Hyujin braced for combat. Their swords met in fierce combat, each parry matching the other. The clang of steel echoed as neither gained the upper hand. After a particularly forceful swing from Zhu, Hyujin, out of breath, admitted he was out of practice. Instead of further engagement, Hyujin turned tail, leading Zhu on a chase. Back at the besieged camp, General Huaqianong managed to regroup with the remaining forces. But it was far from a favorable position, being encircled by Sun Jian's formidable troops. Learning that Hyujin had fled at the first sign of trouble, the mood soured even more. But suddenly, they heard Hyujin's voice crying out, desperately seeking help from the advancing Zhu. Seeing his quarry near capture, Zhu lunged at Hyujin, sword aimed for a killing blow. But a swift motion intercepted him. It was too late when he recognized the deadly arc of Huaqianong's halberd. The general's head was sent soaring, landing a distance away. Hyujin, catching his breath, mockingly chided the fallen Zhu for his foolish pursuit. Believing they had a moment's respite, Hyujin and Huaqianong contemplated their next move. Hyujin, paranoid, pondered if Lubu might have betrayed their plans. However, any further thoughts were cut short by the thundering approach of Sun Jian and his men. Recognizing the fury in Sun Jian's voice, especially after the death of his general, fear gripped Hujian. Hua Shang, ever the loyal commander, urged Hujian to flee while he held the line. But Hujian, true to form, needed no further prompting as he hurriedly retreated. Hua Shang, left in the rear to hold the ground, bravely steps forward, calling out Sun Jian for a personal duel. But Sun Jian, no stranger to tactics, realizes Hua Shang's intentions, to buy time for the retreating main army. Opting for a quick resolution, Sun Jian signals his soldiers to finish off Hua Shang. Gearing up for a valiant stand, Hua Shang braces himself, relishing the honor of a warrior's death on the battlefield. But suddenly, a rain of arrows thwarts Sun Jian's men. Many fall, arrows protruding from their throats. Making a grand entrance is none other than Lu Bu, taunting Sun Jian for resorting to numerical advantage. Every warrior on the field feels a surge of alertness. Lu Bu boldly claims that Sun Jian's time has come. As he approaches the heart of the battle, Hujian, rooted in his path, fears Lu Bu is there for him. But Lu Bu merely notches 3 arrows, letting them loose. Hujian exhales in relief as they fly past him. But they find other marks. Sun Jian narrowly dodges one, a mere scratch gracing his cheek, but his commanders aren't so fortunate. Lu Bu, seemingly proud of his archery, reminisces briefly. In another life, or perhaps a simulated world, his weak constitution had limited his archery prowess. Sun Jian, gathering himself, inquires about Lu Bu. His general, Gong Fu, provides a quick summary, mentioning Lu Bu's real name, Feng Xian. He speaks of his legendary might and his shifting allegiances, including the assassination of a previous benefactor. Suddenly, the tide seems to change. A cavalry surge from Lu Bu's forces reaches Sun Jian's defensive circle. Sun Jian, rallying his men, orders a direct charge, but as Lu Bu charges, weapon in hand, his presence alone is overwhelming. Where he rides, enemies fall, decapitated, cleaved in two. Even the ferocious Sun Jian hesitates upon seeing Lu Bu's raw power. Confronting Sun Jian's leading generals, Lu Bu's might remains unchallenged. Yi Gong takes his chance, lunging at Lu Bu, only to meet a swift end by Lu Bu's halberd. Another, Chengpu, tries a sneak attack, but Lu Bu's counter is so potent, Chengpu struggles to keep his grip. With a swift motion, Lu Bu pierces Chengpu's shoulder. In the midst of this chaos, Hujian manages to break free, silently cursing Lu Bu and considering reporting the day's misfortunes to their higher-ups, unaware of the chaos Lu Bu is causing behind him. As Lu Bu readies to finish off the injured Chengpu, Sun Jian lunges at him. Lu Bu, swift as ever, parries the blow, taunting Sun Jian for his sneaky assault. They lock eyes, Lu Bu telling Sun Jian he sees a lot of himself in the man. For victory, Lu Bu believes, like Sun Jian, one would do just about anything. With conviction, he charges at Sun Jian, quipping that two dominant forces can't coexist. Sun Jian parries, taunting Lu Bu about his traitorous past, but the intensity of their combat pushes him back. Every blow from Lu Bu seems to drain Sun Jian's stamina. Yet, surprisingly, Lu Bu doesn't seem fazed. Inwardly, he wonders if his heart's strengthening has given him this edge. Bracing for a finishing move, Lu Bu wields his halberd with might, causing Sun Jian's sword to fly from his grasp. As Lu Bu advances for the kill, Sun Jian, seemingly cornered, gets an unexpected assist. Chengpu, despite his severe injury from earlier, blocks Lu Bu's lethal swing. He urges Sun Jian to retreat, vowing to hold Lu Bu off for as long as possible. Sun Jian, heeding the advice, calls his troops and makes a strategic withdrawal. Meanwhile, Lu Bu dispatches Chengpu, then swiftly readies an arrow aimed at the fleeing Sun Jian. With precision, the arrow finds its mark, piercing Sun Jian's back. Realizing his end is near, Sun Jian urges his men to continue their escape, valuing their survival over his own. As he collapses, he jests to Lu Bu about the undeniable might he just witnessed, admitting that indeed, two dominant forces can't share one space. As dawn approaches, marking the battle's end, the battleground is a grim sight, littered with casualties from both armies. Hua Shang's lieutenant reports the enemy's retreat and queries about Sun Jian's fate. Just then, Lu Bu presents Sun Jian's severed head as proof of his demise. This trophy invigorates the troops, and they erupt in cheers for Lu Bu. Hua Shang, overwhelmed by gratitude, drops to his knees, thanking Lu Bu for saving him earlier and vowing to repay this debt someday. But Lu Bu brushes off the debt, reminding Hua Shang of his earlier bravery. However, in his mind, Lu Bu thinks Hyujin's decisions handed him an easy win. Upon their return, Lu Bu and his troops receive a hero's welcome. As they celebrate, Lu Bu, sensing an opportunity, pins the blame for the near ambush on Zhekin, accusing him of treason. Despite Zhekin's pleas, he's seized and executed for his supposed betrayal. Lu Bu then elevates Wei Shu, his wife's brother, to a leadership role, reassuring him of the territory's relative peace and potential for growth. Reflecting on his long stint in a simulated world, Lu Bu yearns to reunite with his family. Days pass, and he makes his way to Luoyang. Lu Bu, upon his return to Luoyang, is greeted by Wen Yuan. Wen Yuan shares that Hyujin's already spun a narrative to the Chancellor-in-Chief. Apparently, Hyujin's painting Lu Bu as the reason for their army's setbacks against Sun Jian. Lu Wu chuckles, implying he's got a card up his sleeve. He reveals a bag, teasing Wen Yuan that its contents would showcase Hyujin's incompetence. Inside the Chancellor's residence, as Hyujin vocally criticizes Lu Bu, blaming him for their military blunders, the Chancellor-in-Chief interrupts. The Chancellor reminds Hyujin that Lu Bu isn't just a soldier, but a man he's taken as his own son. Moreover, he's bestowed upon Lu Bu a prized horse. Before they pass judgment, he'd like to hear Lu Bu's perspective. Hyujin's insistent on sidelining Lu Bu, but the Chancellor-in-Chief remains skeptical, noting Lu Bu's worth surpasses 10 Hyujins. Their conversation is interrupted by a scout reporting Lu Bu's triumph. The claims? Lu Bu has taken down Sun Jian and 3 top generals. The enemies retreated a significant distance. The Chancellor-in-Chief quizzes Hyujin, highlighting the stark contrast in their tales. Hyujin tries to dismiss it as false intelligence. In dramatic timing, Lu Bu makes his entrance, dropping the bag for all to see. It's a clear message. Sun Jian's severed head is the undeniable proof that Hyujin's claims were fabricated. Dong Zhu, the Chancellor-in-Chief, validates the head's authenticity. Gratefully, he promises Lu Bu a hefty reward for his significant contribution. Hyujin, feeling cornered, attempts to downplay the victory and calls for Lu Bu's punishment. Infuriated, Dong Zhu orders him away. With Hyujin out of the picture, the Chancellor consults his advisor Wen Yo about a suitable reward. While Wen Yo suggests indulgences like women, wine, and gold, Dong Zhu feels such a reward is lacking. He considers bestowing a title on Lu Bu. Lu Bu, however, declines, suggesting they rethink the reward. He's aware of the political intricacies and doesn't want to further upset the balance of power. Later, at Lu Bu's residence, his wife inquires about a banquet being hosted by the Prime Minister. She's curious why he isn't there. Lu Bu, laughing it off, mentions he played the fatigue card to get some rest. Sensing underlying concerns, she questions his safety. He assures her, with a smirk, that he's not the one in danger. There's a visible change in him, his wife notes. His demeanor's different, more vibrant post-war. Their gaze locks, and a romantic atmosphere envelops them, further intensified by the wine. As they share an intimate moment, Lu Bu drifts into sleep, finding himself gradually transitioning to another realm or system space. Emerging once again in the system space, Lu Bu finds himself unclothed. The photon system updates him on his choices. It says he can select any world scenario he fancies. Lu Bu is curious, questioning if there are realms beyond the one he recently experienced. The system confirms the existence of countless worlds, all replicable for player amusement. These worlds span various epochs, with different themes, one of which was the farmer's life. Realizing the vast possibilities of reincarnating across worlds, Lu Bu ponders a repeat of his prior experience, a life filled with regrets. On his request, the system initiates a download. The system shop pops up, displaying his balance, 28 simulator coins. These coins could enhance his reincarnation by granting starting attributes. While browsing, Lu Bu realizes most traits are beyond his affordability, requiring thousands of coins. However, the cheaper traits appear to be more like penalties than perks. Deciding against making a purchase, he readies himself for a replay. Suddenly, Lu Bu finds himself reborn in the Lu household during the Qian dynasty. Recognizing his surroundings, he's amused rather than baffled. Fast forward a bit, and 12-year-old Lu Bu, proudly clutching a rabbit, encounters the village chief. He promises the chief he'll turn in his portion the next day. Morning arrives, and after weighing the rabbits, he splits the catch, offering half to the village chief. The chief, overjoyed, lauds Lu Bu's upbringing, hinting at forthcoming good news. Returning home, Lu Bu is greeted with jubilation. His father shares that their annual dues have decreased by a significant amount, ensuring their sustenance for the year. Previously, Lu Bu resolved issues with unmatched fighting skill, but in this life, he's an average individual, preferring a simpler existence. His intellect level increases, and his family's gratitude for his endeavors is palpable. On another day, as Lu Bu navigates the marketplace, a vendor inquires about his hunting plans. He confirms his intent, oblivious to local bullies observing him from a distance. They discuss Lu Bu's exceptional archery, downplaying his skills based on past confrontations. Considering military enlistment, the bullies quickly dismiss the idea, aware of their limited survival prospects on the front lines. At the village entrance, recruiters entice locals with tales of valor. As Lu Bu approaches, a guard singles him out, emphasizing the honor in fighting for one's nation. He mentions ongoing recruitments and suggests Lu Bu's suitability. Remembering a previous encounter with this guard, who once advised him about leading an honorable life before executing him, Lu Bu ponders his future. Should he embrace village serenity or join the military for his family's honor? Memories of past battlefield glories tug at his heartstrings, and he ultimately decides to enlist, yearning for the adrenaline of combat. When asked for his name, Lu Bu confidently responds, urging the inquirer to remember it, as soon it would be renowned across the nation. Flashing forward a few years, Lu Bu's strength has been tested in countless battles. One such instance finds him confronting an adversary on the field of battle. After a lethal strike, his opponent curses Lu Bu as life slips away from him. Though Lu Bu's prowess now stands at an impressive 717, he hasn't reached his previous lifetime's zenith. Despite fighting in 10 distinct wars, often brushing shoulders with death, he's still languishing low in the military ranks. In a heated skirmish, 2 enemy soldiers attempt to ambush him. With agility, Lu Bu ducks their swipes and counterattacks, taking them both out. But the onslaught doesn't end there. More adversaries charge at him. Mental exhaustion grips Lu Bu, and in defiance, he dares them all to challenge him simultaneously. Eventually, the cacophony of battle fades, replaced by crows feasting on the fallen. While many owe their survival to Lu Bu, celebrating with water instead of wine, questions about his origins arise amongst the newer recruits. A seasoned soldier shares tales of Lu Bu's exceptional marksmanship, recalling a pivotal moment when their platoon leader's miscalculation put them in jeopardy. While they ultimately managed to prevail, Lu Bu paid a price, losing 2 fingers. This injury shifted his role to that of a paladin, yet he still single-handedly decimated hundreds of foes. A curious new recruit wonders why, despite such feats, Lu Bu hasn't climbed the ranks. The explanation is the platoon leader's jealousy, as he constantly schemes against Lu Bu. Later, another soldier approaches Lu Bu, relaying a summons from their platoon leader. As Lu Bu finishes his meal, he's presented with a near-suicidal mission, leading just 10 men. The resentment from the platoon leader is palpable, presenting Lu Bu with a grim choice: take on the fatal mission or face execution for insubordination. But Lu Bu, reciting his impressive battle record, including vanquishing 367 foes and 13 commanders, challenges the platoon leader's authority. Fed up with the endless injustice and suppressed ambitions, Lu Bu takes a drastic step, severing both arms of the platoon leader. The leader's agonizing screams attract his guards. Calmly, Lu Bu informs them of the leader's treacherous plan to abandon his own troops, purely for self-preservation. The leader's rebuttal falls on deaf ears as Lu Bu readies his sword, advancing on the guards. He states the inevitable: their demise due to their failure to protect their leader. As Lu Bu exits the tent, the camp's atmosphere is thick with tension, echoing with the leader's desperate pleas for aid. The entire platoon watches in shock as their leader's life is snuffed out, his cries echoing in their ears. Lu Bu, seizing the moment, declares the fallen leader unworthy of his title and his men's respect. Having stepped into the leader's shoes, Lu Bu issues a challenge. Anyone opposing him should mark his flesh and make a hasty exit. However, those loyal to him should prove their allegiance by marking the former leader's corpse. They'd then be bonded as brothers, and if they clinched a victory in the upcoming war, their deeds would be absolved. Whispers buzz through the ranks. New recruits grapple with the morality of Lu Bu's proposal, torn between their duty and the allure of his leadership. The atmosphere grows tense until a seasoned warrior unsheathes his blade. Endorsing Lu Bu, he passionately recounts how the old platoon leader had been nothing but a burden. In contrast, Lu Bu was their saving grace. Inspired, many rushed to prove their loyalty, marking the fallen leader as a testament. However, doubts persist amongst a few. One soldier openly questions Lu Bu's strategy, especially considering the might and numbers of their northern foes. Lu Bu responds, emphasizing that it isn't raw strength, but courage that assures victory. As he rallies the troops with his rousing speech, he feels an inner surge, noting an increase in his reputation and intellect. Night settles, and Lu Bu learns the troops have toiled relentlessly, digging moats and readying catapults. Appreciating their efforts, he starts strategizing for the impending confrontation with the northern tribes. Aware of their clan-centric hierarchy and the way they prioritize honor, Lu Bu identifies a potential weakness. If they manage to down the most esteemed clans first, the morale of the remaining ones will crumble. However, given their own limited numbers, they'd need a decoy to lead the enemy into their meticulously set trap. Haunted by the teachings of Sanjin, a past mentor, Lu Bu acknowledges the necessity of sacrifices in the pursuit of victory. When a soldier enters, Lu Bu tasks him with gathering the frail and elderly soldiers. They'd be the front line, the bait for the enemy's charge, their fate left to chance. The soldier hesitates, recognizing some of the men from Lu Bu's earlier brigade. Undeterred, Lu Bu demands they all be positioned at the front. Dawn breaks, and the elder warriors stand vulnerable at the front, the formidable northern tribal army bearing down on them. A young recruit, perplexed, wonders about their defense strategy. A battle-hardened soldier, having stood by Lu Bu in numerous battles, grimly reveals Lu Bu's tactics. They are mere bait, their lives expendable in the grander scheme. The weight of betrayal hangs heavy as he curses Lu Bu for his cold strategy. As tensions rise, the veteran soldier recalls being the first to rally behind Lu Bu during his rise to leadership. Shouting his disdain, he predicts that Lu Bu's recklessness will lead to his eventual downfall and betrayal by his very own. The young recruit watches the drama unfold, realizing that in wars like these, concepts like morality and compassion mean little. Not long after, Lu Bu's forward unit, bereft of their shields, finds itself locked in brutal combat with the northern tribes. Outnumbered and ill-equipped, they're overwhelmed. Observing the chaos, the northern tribesmen grow overconfident, mistaking their initial success as proof of Lu Bu's entire force's weakness. They charge forward without caution. However, Lu Bu reads their overzealous approach and sees it as a chance. He charges headlong into the fray, urging his soldiers to follow suit. One enemy commander is caught off guard by this sudden aggression, and before he can react, Lu Bu delivers a fatal blow. Another enemy tries to ambush Lu Bu, but with a swift move, he avoids the attack and retaliates, cutting down the enemy. Surveying the battlefield, Lu Bu's eyes search for the tribal chief. Spotting a horseman wielding a halberd rather than the typical sword, he zooms in on his target. As he approaches, the tribal leader senses the threat and narrowly avoids Lu Bu's initial strike. Taunting the leader about the quality of his horse, Lu Bu's words further enrage the chief. An intense duel ensues. With a powerful swipe, the chief breaks Lu Bu's sword, but in a flash, Lu Bu incapacitates the chief's horse. Seizing the opportunity, Lu Bu strikes down the tribal leader. Witnessing their leader's fall, the tribesmen are thrown into disarray. Taking the slain chief's horse, Lu Bu signals a retreat, leading his troops away from the chaos. All the while, a separate unit of Lu Bu's men, equipped with catapults, await further off. Hearing the approaching commotion, they recognize it as Lu Bu and his men being chased by the northern tribes. Their commander barks orders, urging them into action. As the enemy enters range, massive rocks are hurled from the catapults. The projectiles wreak havoc amidst the northern tribesmen, forcing them to scatter and dodge. Lu Bu had anticipated that these volleys would barely dent the massive enemy army. His true intention was to disrupt their formation. The enemy's disarray becomes their undoing as they find themselves ensnared in Lu Bu's meticulously crafted trap, a vast concealed moat filled with lethal wooden spikes. Frontline soldiers, caught unaware, plunge to their doom, while those behind, ignorant of the deadly pit, continue their advance, pushing more and more of their comrades into the trap. The chilling screams of men and horses echo across the battlefield. However, it doesn't take long before some among the northern tribes realize the horror that awaits. One rider alerts his superior that the troops ahead have vanished, swallowed by the unseen abyss. The commander of the northern tribes, suspecting some dark magic behind the sudden disappearance of his soldiers, orders an immediate retreat. The mood in Lu Bu's camp dramatically shifts. His soldiers, ecstatic about their victory against seemingly insurmountable odds, shower praises upon Lu Bu. In a moving show of respect, they kneel in unison, proclaiming Lu Bu as the very incarnation of the god of war, pledging their unwavering loyalty to him. Lu Bu contemplates their loyalty, thinking that even vast armies can't match the dedication of a smaller, fiercely loyal band of warriors. Just then, he's notified of a boost in his reputation. As night descends, while resting, Lu Bu muses about the day's events. He felt fortunate as he hadn't expected the northern tribes to be so spooked by the trap. He acknowledges the importance of strategy, especially given his physical vulnerabilities. His introspection leads to another notification about an increase in his intellect. However, this moment of reflection is interrupted by panic outside. Rushing soldiers inform him of a looming threat, a massive platoon, likely the northern tribes retaliating. Swiftly, Lu Bu commands the guards to quell the chaos and selects 30 elite warriors for reconnaissance. As they near the alleged threat, it's evident they face a force far greater than before. On closer inspection, it's revealed these aren't northern tribesmen, but the distinguished cavalry of Dakin. Hemmed in, Lu Bu instructs his men to remain calm. The leader of the Dakin cavalry, General Yan Chongkong, expresses his confusion. He'd heard of a northern invasion, yet everything seemed too calm. Falling to his knees, Lu Bu informs the general of the northern tribe's defeat at the hands of the border guards. Skepticism arises due to the vast difference in numbers between the two forces. To substantiate his claims, Lu Bu points to the trap-filled moats, now a grave for countless northern tribesmen and their steeds. The sight leaves General Yan astounded. Following a brief introduction, Lu Bu's reputation with General Yan is solidified. Time flies, and we find Lu Bu, now 22, training soldiers in an open field. As his proficiency grows, so do his skills. On the fort walls, two officials indulge in idle gossip. One questions the audacity of the other, who is leisurely roasting meat instead of participating in the training. The retort centers around Lu Bu's supposed lack of royal connections. Their chat turns to rumors about Lu Bu's rapid ascent in rank and past deeds, including whispers of Lu Bu having once killed a superior. The gossip is quickly shut down with a stern warning about potential repercussions from General Yan. Post-training, Lu Bu meets with General Yan, who offers praise for Lu Bu's commendable training techniques, which have deterred the northern tribes from any further aggression. Yet General Yan's primary reason for the meeting was personal. He saw potential in Lu Bu not just as a soldier, but as a match for his daughter. Sneaking a glance, Lu Bu notices the young woman blushing, indicating her approval. Gratefully, Lu Bu responds to the general's proposal. Upon hearing General Yan's marriage proposal, Lu Bu hesitates. He isn't willing to accept. This upsets General Yan's daughter, Shua, who promptly draws her sword, pointing it at Lu Bu in a mix of anger and question. She demands to know why he's refusing her hand in marriage. The scene then rewinds 3 years, where a younger Shua is seen sparring with a swordsman. With a powerful slash, she disarms him. Onlookers burst into admiration for her, impressed by her finesse. However, Shua isn't convinced by the flattery. She believes the instructor took it easy on her out of respect for her father, General Yan. She requests a rematch, but the instructor is reluctant. Watching from the sidelines, Lu Bu interjects with a scathing critique. He feels they are wasting time indulging the general's daughter while the northern tribes keep attacking Dakin. He asserts that if they continue down this path, they'll tarnish the reputation of General Yan's cavalry. In the midst of this, a soldier, unfamiliar with Lu Bu, asks his colleagues about this outspoken newcomer. He's informed that Lu Bu recently returned with General Yan after holding off thousands from the northern tribes with only a few hundred men. Shua, taking offense to Lu Bu's comments, confronts him. When he suggests she would be better off in her room than on the battlefield, she challenges him to a duel. He dismisses the idea, but when she pushes further, the two face off. As the fight ensues, Lu Bu masterfully dodges Shua's aggressive attacks. When she lunges, he evades her and uses a swift move to disarm her. With her sword now in his possession, he points it at her, admonishing her about the brutal realities of war. The crowd watching grows restless and displeased, seeing this newcomer overpower their general's daughter. Lu Bu leaves, imparting a final piece of advice about the mercilessness of war. While many veterans scorn him as he departs, Shua appears to harbor complex feelings towards him. Days later, horns blare from the castle walls, signaling an imminent event. As Lu Bu prepares to head out with a group of soldiers, Shua inquires about his destination. She learns from a veteran that a general from the northern tribes issued a duel challenge the prior night intended to demoralize the Dakins. Unsure of who to send, The court suggested Lu Bu take on the challenge. This decision, however, isn't just about strategy. It's also a consequence of Lu Bu's previous confrontation with Shua, seen by many as an act of disrespect. The opponent, Hua Talon, is a formidable warrior from the northern tribes who's claimed many generals' lives. The veteran reveals they've essentially sent Lu Bu to his death. Horrified by the revelation and the underlying plot, Shu dashes towards her father, seeking to intervene. Guards stand sentinel outside. Outside General Yan's chamber, a guard informs Shua that her father is engrossed in watching the duel, and it's not the right time for interruptions. However, the noise Shua is making grabs General Yan's attention. "What's all the fuss about?" he inquires. Shua, deeply concerned, urges her father to reconsider his decision and spare Lu Bu from the battle. General Yan patiently explains that military commands aren't easily revoked. Yet Shua, determined, plants herself firmly before her father, insisting she won't leave until the order is reversed. Suddenly, a clamor from outside captures their attention. Anticipating that the noise might signal Lu Bu's defeat, given its suddenness, General Yan is taken aback when instead, northern tribesmen carry in the lifeless body of their general. Both General Yan and Shua are stunned by the sight. Their astonishment heightens as they hear Lu Bu's voice, announcing his presence. Entering the chamber, Lu Bu declares that he's accomplished his mission, dramatically dropping Hua Talon's severed head onto the floor, which immediately stains the wooden ground with blood. Acknowledging Lu Bu's formidable feat, especially since he's been in service for only a short while, General Yan mentions Shua's deep concern for him. As he inquires how they might reward Lu Bu, an embarrassed Shu protests, claiming that no reward is necessary for what seemed like a simple task for him. Overwhelmed, she dashes off, her face flushed, leaving her father laughing heartily. Fast forward a year, and two officials converse about Lu Bu's recent accolades, single-handedly eliminating the entire northern tribe during the war. A curious veteran soldier wonders how Lu Bu achieved such a victory. One official hints that Lu Bu's imminent return might offer more insights. Listening in on the conversation, Shu learns of Lu Bu's return. In mere hours, he's back at the border gate, greeted by an excited crowd. Amidst the joy, Lu Bu locks eyes with Shua, who shyly averts her gaze. Pleased with Lu Bu's contributions, General Yan promotes him to garrison general. Lu Bu then takes the initiative to train the army personally. On one such training day, spotting Shua amidst the soldiers, Lu Bu, a little irked, pulls her aside, reiterating his belief that the battlefield isn't her place. He urges her to leave before her father finds out. Yet Shua remains defiant, expressing her desire to fight alongside him. Lu Bu warns her about facing military repercussions if she continues to resist, which makes her challenge him further. Losing his patience, Lu Bu draws his sword on her. Upset, Shua drops her weapon and retreats, tears streaming down her face. Flash forward to the present moment where Shua, sword in hand, confronts Lu Bu over his marriage rejection. Lu Bu reasons that with ever-present threats from the northern tribes, he could fall in battle any time, making marriage a risky proposition. When Shua declares she'd rather die with him on the battlefield, he drops a bombshell. He already has a wife and daughter awaiting him at home. Heartbroken, Shua calls him out on his bluff, reminding him that he hasn't been home since he joined the army at 12. Overcome by emotions, she flees the room once more. Apologizing to General Yan for the scene, Lu Bu receives a consoling response. General Yan chuckles about Shua's headstrong nature since childhood. He then reflects on his own early enlistment at 12, noting it's been a decade since he last visited his family. He encourages Lu Bu to take a short leave and reconnect with his loved ones. Meanwhile, Xuan's suggestion that Shu take a break clearly resonated with Lu Bu, who didn't hesitate to accept the general's advice. A few days on, Shu's guards notice her unusual quietness, sparking concern among them. One of the seasoned soldiers fills them in, revealing General Yan's ulterior motive behind proposing Lu Bu's marriage to Shu. He aimed to elevate Lu Bu's rank. The same veteran expounded that the nobility often mistrusted outsiders, opting to promote kin instead. So General Yan's intentions were to make Lu Bu a part of his family, smoothing his way up the hierarchy, since the imperial court rarely favored commoners. The wise old soldier opined that Lu Bu might have missed a golden opportunity by not seizing this chance. Time fast forwards, and we find Lu Bu stepping into his native village. His homecoming is met with joy and exuberance as villagers swarm around him. However, an underlying unease grips him. He recalls the dark memory of decimating these same villagers in a past life. The village chief heaps praises onto Lu Bu for his valiant efforts against the northern tribes, mentioning that the imperial court even lightened the village's tax burden as a result. In a surprising twist, the chief declares Lu Bu his adopted son. Eager to reconnect, Lu Bu inquires about his parents. The chief guides him to a brand new house where an unfamiliar face eagerly awaits him. As she approaches, he realizes she's his younger sister, Ling Qi, all grown up. The reunion is emotional. While Ling Qi joyfully embraces her long-lost brother, she shares that their mother is out shopping in preparation for a feast in his honor. She goes on to say that their parents had wanted to welcome him at the village's entrance, but the chief had other plans. Upon their parents' return, the atmosphere becomes poignant. Their mother is devastated by the scars marring Lu Bu's body, chiding her husband for his perceived indifference. But in a touching moment, the father steps out, revealing his act of stoicism to be a facade, deeply affected by the toll the years had taken on their son. The family later shares a heartfelt meal where Lu Bu's father admits his one remaining wish, to see his son settle down. After dinner, Lu Bu, feeling nostalgic, decides to explore the village. During his walk, he spots 3 familiar bullies, now grown, pressuring shopkeepers for taxes. Noticing Lu Bu, the trio freezes, giving him a wide berth. Their leader cautions his gang, sensing the potential danger Lu Bu now embodies, describing him as a seemingly docile spirit that could unleash havoc if provoked. Days pass, and while Lu Bu wanders through a market, 2 soldiers approach him. Their news is grim. The northern tribes, emboldened by his absence, are mounting a massive assault. Lu Bu heads straight for the border where he reunites with General Yan, who hands over the military reins to him. The general confides that a victorious outcome would propel Lu Bu's standing in the imperial court. Soon 2 colossal armies square off, with Lu Bu emerging as a formidable force, cutting through enemies with ease. As the battlefield is consumed with chaos, Lu Bu fights fiercely, cutting down any enemy who crosses his path. Though he decimates many, it seems like the enemy forces are unending. Suddenly, amid the roars of battle, a familiar voice catches his ear. Turning around, he spots Shu Yan fiercely battling an opponent, eventually severing his arm. Racing to her side, he asks what brought her to such a dangerous place. But without waiting for his inquiry, she charges ahead, slicing an opponent in half with immense strength. Suddenly, an arrow heads straight for her. Quick on his feet, Lu Bu pulls her to safety, knocking them both off their horses. As they gather themselves, Shu Yan, seemingly irritated, questions why Lu Bu keeps interfering in her matters. But before he can answer, an enemy rider charges at him, sword raised. Just in the nick of time, Shu Yan pushes Lu Bu out of harm's way, but at a devastating cost. The war finally comes to a halt. 2 wearied officials rest against a wall, grateful to be alive. The Season 1 didn't expect Lu Bu to defeat the northern tribes, but their joy is short-lived as they worry about Shu Yan's safety. As she receives medical attention, anxious soldiers, including Lu Bu, await news. Their fears are confirmed when they hear General Yan's heart-wrenching pleas to his unconscious daughter. Emerging later, the general's face is pale and sunken, announcing the tragic news of Shu Yan's death. In his grief, he demands Lu Bu return his commander's seal and leave. Lu Bu's trusted lieutenant stands up to remind General Yan of the promise he made to recommend Lu Bu to the imperial court after the war victory. But the general, already on edge, accuses Lu Bu of treachery, even recalling rumors of Lu Bu murdering a previous leader to rise to power. This confrontation escalates further, with General Yan ordering Lu Bu's lieutenant's execution. Standing his ground, the lieutenant credits Lu Bu for their survival against the northern tribes, attributing their previous leader's incompetence for many deaths. He staunchly defends Lu Bu, stating Shu Yan's actions and subsequent death were her own choices. Tensions rise as the army seems poised to rebel against General Yan, waiting for Lu Bu's signal. But amidst this potential coup, Lu Bu roars at them to stand down. Pleading with the general, he offers to obey any command as long as his men are treated fairly. Striking a truce, Lu Bu vows never to return to the border. Decades later, Lu Bu's village flourishes. At 60, surrounded by grandchildren, he reflects on life. Although he's received numerous gifts and well wishes for his milestone birthday, he still yearns for the honor he believes only service can bring. Amidst the celebration, a servant interrupts, announcing a mysterious woman, flanked by soldiers, seeking Lu Bu. Curious, he heads out to meet this unexpected guest waiting at the village's edge. Spotting the soldiers, Lu Bu instantly recognizes them as men of General Yan. His attention then shifts to the approaching woman. As she draws closer, she swiftly places her sword at Lu Bu's throat. Déjà vu strikes Lu Bu as he recalls Shu Yan making a similar gesture years ago. Stammering, he questions how she's alive. In response, Shu Yan signals for them to move to the carriage for privacy. Once inside, with her mask removed, she explains her previous injuries weren't fatal. Instead, it was just a facial scar. She shares that the real story behind her supposed death was far more intricate. She had deeply loved Lu Bu, but her father, General Yan, had arranged her marriage to Jiang Tianyi, a man she deeply despised. In despair, she wanted to end her own life, which led to the incident. General Yan, she recounted, had faced immense pressure. Jiang Tianyi's father, the Imperial Secretary of War, was instrumental in supplying food and weapons. Going against his wishes for the arranged marriage would be catastrophic. Moreover, being the adopted daughter of the Emperor, Shu Yan's scarred face would enrage him, risking both her and Lu Bu's lives. Recognizing these stakes, General Yan devised a plan for Shu Yan to die to protect Lu Bu from court politics and potential harm. All this while, Lu Bu had misunderstood General Yan's intentions. Overwhelmed, he inquires about the general's current state. Shu Yan, with a heavy heart, reveals that her father passed away recently. The political backlash from the court after Shu Yan's death had strained their resources and weakened General Yan's health. On his deathbed, he repeatedly voiced regret, wishing Lu Bu had been by their side to fend off the northern tribes. Handing Lu Bu a letter from her late father, she watches as he reads. The letter paints a picture of a wise, reflective General Yan, lamenting the harsh realities of life and empire. He sees his younger, hot-blooded self in Lu Bu and had yearned for a peaceful life for him. But with the empire on the brink of danger, he bestows upon Lu Bu one last mission. Overwhelmed, Lu Bu dashes out, urging his sons to prepare his horse. He has to leave for the North Gate immediately. His family, baffled by his abrupt decision on his birthday, hesitates. But with a stern shout from Lu Bu and a confirming nod from his wife, they comply. With Shu Yan accompanying him, they pause at General Yan's resting place. Paying his respects, Lu Bu murmurs his feelings towards the late general, acknowledging the depth of their shared history. Recognizing the weight of his responsibility, Lu Bu reassures Anne. He says, "Don't fret. If it comes to it, I'm ready to lay down my life for this land." Turning to his fellow generals, he seeks their commitment. Without hesitation, they roar their allegiance, promising to follow him even into death. Shu Yan then hands Lu Bu General Yan's storied golden armor. With a determined look in her eyes, she makes a bold request. "Let me stand by your side in this battle." Without much ado, Lu Bu grants her wish. Days pass, and the echoing war drums signal the start of a monumental clash. As the dust rises, Lu Bu and Shu Yan carve a path through the northern tribe's ranks. But in the midst of their fierce onslaught, tragedy strikes. Shu Yan is suddenly impaled by a spear, leaving her fatally wounded. This moment of vulnerability for Lu Bu proves catastrophic. Caught off guard, a blade finds its mark, slashing his neck. As he collapses, the Russian cavalry overwhelms him, with a horse trampling his face. This brutal blow seals his fate. Yet death isn't the end for Lu Bu. He finds himself in a mysterious system space, tears streaming down his face. Based on his feats and reputation as a respected general, he's awarded numerous status points. His reputation soars, given the tales of his deeds even among the northern tribes. Though he accumulated vast rewards, his noble nature led him to spend it all for the greater good. As the system evaluates, it acknowledges that age weakened his physical strength but commends his intellect. For his selfless sacrifice, Lu Bu earns a heroic sacrifice ending with an A rating. Suddenly, an array of rewards appear before him. Alongside a hefty sum of virtual coins, he's presented with 3 potential enhancements: increased speed, velocity, improved memory, retentive memory, or a fortified liver, level 1 liver strengthening. After some contemplation, he opts for the liver enhancement. The system confirms that the attributes he gained in this simulation would carry over to his actual self. He's then granted the trait tenacity, which solidifies his unyielding will. Snapping back to reality, Lu Bu awakens with a start. Observing his disoriented state, his wife rushes to him, concern evident in her eyes. She notes the paleness of his face, suggesting he experienced a nightmare. Calming himself, Lu Bu requests the finest wine they possess, intending to visit an old friend. The following day, Lu Bu finds himself at a grave, deep in thought. Unexpectedly, Yuan approaches, mentioning the anniversary of Ding Yuan's death. Tension hangs in the air as they converse. Yuan accuses Lu Bu of betraying and killing his own foster father. With a mix of remorse and introspection, Lu Bu admits his uncertainties, questioning whether he had misunderstood Ding Yuan's intentions. This revelation leaves Yuan taken aback, as he witnesses a side of Lu Bu rarely shown. As they sit together, Lu Bu advises Yuan to support the Grand Chancellor in the quest to unify the land. Yuan, in return, paints a grim picture of the challenges ahead. Aligning oneself with the Grand Chancellor means navigating a tumultuous sea with the storm ever intensifying. Regardless, Lu Bu holds firm, emphasizing that their duty as generals remains paramount regardless of the unpredictable future. The dusk began to paint the sky as Lu Bu and Yuan made their way home. Breaking the comfortable silence, Lu Bu turned to Yuan. "Can I rely on you for something?" Yuan, without hesitation, replied, "Of course, like a brother." Lu Bu voiced his concerns about the imminent relocation of the capital by the Grand Chancellor, regardless of the battle outcomes. He entrusted Yuan with the safety of his wife and daughter, urging him to take them to Chang'an. Yuan tried to comfort him, hinting that Lu Bu would soon be up against the coalition armies. They continued walking, with Yuan silently noting Lu Bu's unmistakable thirst for battle. By daybreak, the Grand Chancellor's residence was buzzing with the presence of generals and tacticians, but the room fell to a hushed whisper as Lu Bu made his entrance. Ziran, a fellow general, pointed out the obvious. Lu Bu's entrance was always a scene stealer. Then, Wasi and Hujin couldn't help but poke fun at Lu Bu for killing Sanjian, implying he was basking a little too much in the limelight. Lu Bu, never one to back down, shot back with a jibe at Hujin's tactics, or lack thereof, in their recent confrontation with Sanjian. He even credited Hujin with inadvertently aiding him by running like a coward. Infuriated, Hujin reached for his sword but was promptly held back by Ziran. A guard then interrupted their banter, announcing the Grand Chancellor's arrival. All showed their respects, though a mishap nearly occurred when the Chancellor almost slipped trying to sit. Then, all eyes turned to a nervous Wan Pan, who bore an edict from the Emperor. Trembling, he began to read. The message hailed the great Chancellor, Donjo, for his unifying efforts and suppression of the rebellious factions. As a reward, the Emperor appointed him as the Grand Master, elevating him above the three dukes and the feudal lords. Donju's smirk couldn't be missed. Deep in thought, Lu Bu deduced that only the slight prodigy, Wen Yu, could have masterminded such a move. As Donju, with a dramatic flourish, tossed the edict to Wen Yu, Wan Pan made a hasty exit. The room erupted in congratulations for Donju's newfound prestige. Donju, reveling in the moment, remarked that the Emperor was now fully reliant on him. He then shared plans of moving the capital to Chang'an, but emphasized that his army's strength must be demonstrated first to dispel any notions of retreat due to fear. When Wen Yu chimed in about the recent defeat they handed to the Guadong army, Donju gauged the room, asking who was ready for another showdown. Surprisingly, Lu Bu remained silent, taking a more contemplative stance. Instead, Hujin, Wasi, and Ziran eagerly volunteered. Wen Yu raised an eyebrow, noticing a shift in Lu Bu's demeanor over the past days. Tong Chou, noticing Lu Bu, called him over. Donju looked at Lu Bu inquisitively and asked, "How about leading the charge against the Guadal army as the vanguard again?" Lu Bu hesitated, saying if he kept racking up achievements, it might make his position unstable. This comment amused Dong Shou, who laughingly asked everyone present, "Does anyone else feel Lu Bu's position isn't firm?" Despite the playful challenge, Deng Shou formally appointed Lu Bu as the vanguard, with Hoak Shenong and Hujin to assist. Their immediate mission? Secure the key military spot, Xiangao. All three agreed without hesitation, although Hujin seemed a bit miffed, possibly because Lu Bu had just surpassed him in rank. After the meeting dispersed, two generals, fully aware of Hujin's jealous streak, approached him. They hinted at a plot against Lu Bu. Hujin's eyes lit up with interest, and soon they began hatching their plan. Days later, near the city gates, Lu Bu had a touching farewell with his daughter and wife, preparing for war. His daughter's plea for him to stay evoked memories of his sister from another realm. Trying to comfort her, he mentioned a treat from his past, sugar-coated haws, but he then realized she had no clue what he was talking about. It was a memory from the simulation world. Entrusting his family to Wen Yuan's care, Lu Bu tried to assure him, despite Wen Yuan's concerns about the makeup of the army under Lu Bu's command. Lu Bu felt every soldier, no matter how inexperienced, could rise to greatness with the right training and leadership. Upon reaching the North Army camp, Hujin's arrival preceded Lu Bu's. When the guards instructed him to wait outside, Hujin defiantly proceeded inwards. As he walked, memories flooded back, Wazi revealing that the Grand Master had only sent the Shiliang army and the Northern Army for this war, excluding the Bing cavalry. If Hujin could control the Northern Army as well, Lu Bu would command nobody, leaving him vulnerable. Smirking at this prospect, Hujin's reverie was interrupted when arrows suddenly shot towards him, causing his horse to rear and him to tumble. As his men rushed to help him, an imposing figure, Gao's son, stepped out. Gao's son, a reputable figure known for his unwavering integrity and powerful elite troop named the Battle Rams, challenged Hujin for entering the camp without the Tiger Seal, a symbolic authorization. A tense standoff ensued. Hujin tried to pull rank, mentioning orders from the Grand Master. However, Gao's son wouldn't budge without seeing the Tiger Seal, despite Hujin's dismissive remarks. Wusan, visibly irritated, hollered, "Do you really think you can ignore a general higher in rank than you?" From the shadows, Lu Bu emerged, revealing he held the Tiger's Seal. He applauded Gao's son for upholding military protocol and flaunted the seal. Gao's son took it from Lu Bu to verify its authenticity. Lu Bu, seizing the moment, teased Hujin for overlooking military norms. Hujin shot back angrily, but Lu Bu coolly reminded him of their new chain of command. A memory surfaced. Hujin had once looked down on Lu Bu. While Lu Bu chose to let bygones be bygones, considering their shared allegiance to the Grand Master, he warned Hujin about any future betrayals. As this was unfolding, Gao's son confirmed the seal's authenticity, signaling Lu Bu's official entrance to the camp. Hujin, though shaken, silently vowed revenge for the public embarrassment. The next day, Lu Bu, watching the Battle Rams' rigorous training session, was full of praises. Their fierce dedication impressed him. He did, however, wonder why their gear seemed so worn. Gao's son confessed that his troops, despite their hard work, had been overshadowed by the Shiliang army, making it tough to procure quality equipment. Lu Bu, always a man of action, told Gao's son to assemble some troops. They were headed to Wang Fang's camp. Upon arrival, Lu Bu introduced the elite battle rams to Wang Fang, highlighting their mutual connections. When Lu Bu asked to borrow some gear, Wang Fang hesitated, mentioning his strained resources. A nearby elite soldier recalled Gao's son's words, which warned them about Lu Bu's potential tactics. Ready to intervene if things escalated, the soldier was surprised when Lu Bu proposed a deal instead. Lu Bu had learned of Wang Fang's penchant for spears, promising him a top-tier blacksmith and quality wrought iron. The offer piqued Wang Fang's interest, and both camps soon reached an accord. As the elite soldier oversaw the equipment transfer, he mused that the stories about Lu Bu didn't quite match the man in front of them. In the backdrop of this, storm clouds gathered ominously over Qingyang City. Standing atop its walls, Benju was approached by a legendary figure, the Chinese General Ko Kao, also known as Meng. Meng remarked on the stifling atmosphere inside, seeking refuge in the open air. He scornfully commented on the naivety of the feudal lords, thinking they could eliminate a Grand Master merely with curses. Benju simply replied that they felt helpless, having already endured countless setbacks. After facing defeat for months on end, the news hit that Sun Jian, among the mightiest of lords, had fallen. With his demise, the only notable force left was General Gong Sun and his elite cavalry. Venture, a tad doubtful about their chances against the Grand Master, regretted not promoting Yuan Shui to lead the coalition army. However, Meng countered that Yuan Shui's overconfidence would have probably been their undoing. "Have you ever seen yourself as a rebel?" Meng asked Venture. The question took Venture aback. Meng cautioned that if they continued losing, the enemy's confidence would surge, and they'd be branded as rebels and killed. Venture, now truly concerned, sought Meng's advice. Meng's response was clear: they kept facing defeat because these lords weren't willing to fully commit their troops. They needed someone with nothing to lose to lead the charge. Just as they pondered on where to find such a warrior, Sun Jian's sons delivered the dire news of their father's demise. Venture was shocked. He knew they were on the back foot, but the loss of a principal general was unthinkable. Bofu chimed in, explaining that while they had the Shiliang army under control, everything shifted with Lu Bu's arrival and his formidable Bing cavalry. They had lost not only Sun Jian but also Generals Han and Shen. Lu Bu, it seemed, was invincible. Meng, upon hearing this, displayed an unexpected emotion. Tears welled up, and he expressed grief over Sun Jian's untimely end. However, Venture, after catching a glimpse of Meng's face, realized those weren't tears of sorrow, but of laughter. Meng had been aware of Sun Jian's fate all along. Pulling Sun Jian's sons to their feet, he rallied them, declaring they'd seek vengeance. Bu Fu, fueled by rage, committed to leading the charge against Lu Bu, sparing no expense. Venture pledged to bolster Bofu's forces with the remaining troops and additional provisions. After the two sons left, Venture probed Meng about his odd reaction. Meng gleefully pointed out that they were in search of a fearless warrior and had just found one in Bofu. It was cause for celebration. The very next day, at Lu Bu's camp entrance, both armies were undergoing rigorous training under Lu Bu's watchful eyes. Hujin, begrudgingly, stood right behind Lu Bu, enduring the blistering sun. While Lu Bu admired the discipline of the battle rams, the Shiliang troops disappointed him, collapsing due to the heat. Lu Bu, curious about the Shiliang army's leadership, questioned Hujin. However, Hujin cheekily speculated that the commanders might be nursing hangovers. Eager to see if Lu Bu would discipline them, Hujin watched intently. Lu Bu, unyielding as ever, ordered the drum to be struck. The edict was clear: tardy soldiers would face severe consequences. Just as the drum was about to sound the third time, the two commanders hastily appeared, apologizing profusely for their tardiness. Hujin rebuked them for undermining military protocol. They expressed their remorse, and while Hujin acknowledged their apology, he gave them a stern warning. After repeated tardiness, Lu Bu gave the commanders a final warning, emphasizing the severe consequences of their negligence. Gaosen explained that the penalty for not showing up by the third drumbeat was death. Without hesitation, Lu Bu directed his troops to apprehend the two tardy commanders. They pleaded with Hujin for mercy. Trying to mediate, Hujin reasoned with Lu Bu that executing subordinates right before a battle would dampen morale. However, Lu Bu wasn't in the mood for excuses and swiftly executed one commander on the spot. The remaining commander, paralyzed with terror, broke down. Although Hujin was fuming over Lu Bu's rash actions, Lu Bu justified it. He stressed that while the Shiliang soldiers toiled under the scorching sun, these commanders were leisurely late. Wanting to make a point, Lu Bu then selected two soldiers, praising them for their discipline. He posed a question, wondering if they resented such lackluster leadership. Hesitating, neither responded. In a surprising twist, Lu Bu offered them a sword and a challenge. The first to kill the remaining commander would succeed him, while the second would be his deputy. One soldier, acting on impulse, claimed the role. Shocked by his own actions, the new commander found reassurance from Lu Bu, who commended his swift decision-making. To the larger army, Lu Bu laid out his philosophy. He'd reward valor and discipline violators ruthlessly. Kao's son, observing this, admired Lu Bu's strategic acumen. By eliminating and then immediately replacing the commanders with their peers, he restored morale. Moving on, we hear about Changgao, also known as Hulo Pass. Local tales speak of Emperor Zhu once keeping tigers there, gifted by the people, which is why some refer to it as Hulo Pass. The pass, naturally protected by mountains and canals, serves as a formidable defense. Lizu, reporting to Lu Bu, brought news that enemy scouts were spotted near the pass. The coalition's movements were underway. When Lu Bu inquired about the coalition's force distribution, Lisu confessed his ignorance, having been primarily tasked with city protection. Lu Bu reminded him of the importance of understanding both their own and the enemy's strength, adding that without the natural defenses of Changgao, they'd have been vulnerable long ago. Lisu took the advice to heart, with Lu Bu urging him to scout the enemy's positioning. Reflecting, Lu Bu remembered it was Lisu who once advised him to kill Ding Yuan. Though he held resentment, Lu Bu recognized that he was ultimately accountable for his decisions. Elsewhere, he directed Hua Xiang to sweep the peripheries for any lurking adversaries. Concurrently, the granary was bustling with activity. Yushi informed Yuan Shu an advancing troop of Shiliang soldiers, led by Huaxiang, the man who'd previously slain Zhu Dunrong. When Yuan Shu questioned Huaxiang's might compared to his, Yushi mentioned his victory over one of Sun Jian's 4 generals. Yuan Shu, trying to embolden Yushi, declared that while Sun Jian's army might have been bested by Lu Bu, they stood no chance against Yuan Shu's force. Although filled with doubt, Yushi nodded, with Yuan Shu demanding Huaxiang's head as a trophy to solidify his standing among other lords. Yushi, aware of his own limitations, recognized the steep odds he was up against. In the heat of the ongoing conflict, Yushi knew deep down that he was outmatched by the enemy. but he wouldn't dare admit to Yuan Shu that he'd risen in rank through sly tactics. As they geared up, a scout rushed to Huaqiang, relaying that his small opposition force was advancing rapidly. Huaqiang admired their swift response and commanded his troops to press on. As arrows rained down from Huaqiang's side, Yushi directed his front line to use their shields as cover. Though many acted promptly, some were a fraction too slow, becoming casualties of the barrage. Understanding the limited capabilities of his Nanyang infantry, who were more accustomed to supplementary roles, Yushi knew the odds were against them. But not one to give up easily, he commanded a forward charge. Even as his troops fought bravely, he saw a chance to slip away. As Huaqiang's blade brought down many infantrymen, his gaze landed on the fleeing Yushi. Promising his men he'd return with more troops, Yushi raced away with Huaqiang hot on his heels. Elsewhere, Yuan Shu and Wenger were indulging in a feast. Yuan Shu dismissed Huaqiang's prowess, believing Yushi would soon bring the enemy's head, but their celebration was cut short by the desperate cries of Yushi, begging for sanctuary. Both leaders, taken aback by Yoshi's state, watched in horror as Huaqiang, with a swift movement, ended Yoshi's life. Introducing himself to the enemy generals, Huaqiang's audacity infuriated Yuan Shu, who shattered his wineglass in frustration. He turned to another general, demanding Huaqiang's defeat, but the general hesitated, expressing his troops' fatigue from their long journey. As Yuan Shu fumed, Wenger calmed him, introducing a formidable warrior, Pang Feng, who was eager to face Huaqiang. As chaos ensued outside, city gates creaked open. Panicking infantrymen retreated and a lone horseman, Pang Feng, emerged. He made his presence felt instantly, mercilessly attacking retreating soldiers. Face to face with Huaqiang, their intense clash began. While Pang Feng unleashed powerful blows, Huaqiang's agility helped him evade each one. In a tactical move, Huaqiang forced Pang Feng's weapon into the ground, seizing the momentary lapse to deliver a fatal strike. Witnessing the demise of their formidable fighter, the watching warlords, particularly Wenger, seethed with anger. Determined, Wenger rallied his troops, vowing to end Huaqiang's reign. Inside the city, messengers rushed to inform both Meng and Benchu about the events unfolding, particularly the movements of General Yuan and the inspector. Amidst the escalating tension of war, word reached Benji that both GM and the revered Inspector Wenji were defeated. Benji, puzzled and disheartened, remarked how the war had barely begun, and yet they'd suffered significant losses. The report continued, detailing how both General Yoshi and Pang Feng met their demise, followed by a failed revenge mission by Wenji, who returned bearing numerous injuries. Before much could be discussed, both Yuan Shu and the battered Wenji stormed into the camp, fury evident on their faces, particularly directed towards Huaqiang. Yuan Shu, desperate for reinforcements, was met with denial. Trying to offer some solace, Mangda assured Wenji that wins and losses were mere chapters in the tale of war, expressing relief at his safe return. Despite this, Benji emphasized that heading into battle after two significant defeats would further damage troop morale. Yuan Shu, however, was reluctant to concede. Shifting gears, Mangda proposed they strategize on taking Chiangjiao City. As they huddled around the strategy table, Mangda enlightened the group. He acknowledged the prowess of Huaqiang, an emerging force, but reminded them of their secret weapon, Lu Bu. A formidable warrior, Lu Hu's reputation preceded him, especially after his triumphant defeat of Sanjin. Mangda pinpointed General Hujin as the Chilean army's glaring weak point and proposed they exploit this chink in the armor. While Lisu, responsible for guarding Changgao, usually took a defensive stance, Mangda believed their current boldness was probably fueled by reinforcements. He detailed how Changjiao's natural defenses favored its inhabitants, but the Chilean army's offensive prowess could be their downfall. The plan? Camp right outside Changjiao and constantly raid them, forcing the Chilean army into defense. Meanwhile, in Changgao, Lu Bu received news of the advancing coalition forces. Surprised, Huaqiang mentioned he had just vanquished two of their leaders, so a swift counter wasn't expected. Inquiring about the coalition's lead, a scout identified Hain, along with Lord Wangquang and 7 other feudal lords. Huaqiang, eager to lead, was checked by Lu Bu, who instead called on Gaoshan to rally the troops. Hujin expressed his eagerness to redeem past mistakes by supporting Lu Bu. However, Lu Bu, skeptical of Hujin's sincerity, dismissed him with a jibe, which only earned a smirk from Hujin, hinting at ulterior motives. As both armies converged, Wang Quang, the coalition's frontman, seemed eager. Tauntingly, he questioned Lu Bu's decision to bring only a modest force. Lu Bu's retort was sharp, referencing previous defeats Wang Quang suffered. Accepting the unspoken challenge, Wang Quang unleashed one of his top generals, Fanget, to engage Lu Bu. The battlefield seemed to slow as Fanget, relying on his speed to bolster his weapon's power, charged at Lu Bu. But Lu Bu, ever the strategist, suddenly burst forward with unparalleled speed, slicing Fanget in two, leaving Wang Quang shaken. Undeterred, Wang Quang ordered his entire army to surround and overpower Lu Bu. Yet the warrior seemed unfazed, cutting through enemies with ease. Simultaneously, Gao Shen commanded the battering rams to surge ahead. The battlefield was ablaze with action. Battle rams effortlessly pierced through the front line of Wang Quang's forces. The sight made Wang Huan question if he was up against supernatural foes. He swiftly ordered a retreat. But Lu Bu, in bursts of speed, dashed forward, delivering a powerful side strike with his weapon. The sheer force sent Wang Huang spiraling in the air, visible to his entire army. He plummeted down, the fear etched on his face evident to all. His battered armor signified the end of their lord. Back at the base, a scout relayed to Benji the tragic fate of Wang Huang and the subsequent collapse of his Hanyi army. With the army in disarray and fleeing for their lives, Benji turned to Mangda for guidance. Mangda, however, nonchalantly remarked that this was just the beginning. Even though Lu Bu tasted victory, Mangda had reservations about his ultimate triumph. Chaos persisted outside Chang Jiao's gates. Huaxiang shouted in vain for entry, but silence answered. Lu Bu deduced a betrayal, recalling Hujin's odd behavior. Hujin's offer of assistance might have been a ploy to allay suspicions. As they debated, the urgency intensified, with Huaxiang pointing out that the imminent arrival of the 7 feudal lords could spell their doom if they remained trapped. Lu Bu gave a clear directive: regroup and prepare to forge a way out. The ground where Wang Huang faced his end was a grim sight, littered with Hanyi soldiers. 3 different feudal lords, including Gong Sun, who was visibly shaken by the scene, surveyed the aftermath. A soldier then informed Gong Sun of their lord's demise, detailing Lu Bu's ferocious rampage. Gong Sun was curious. Was Lu Bu genuinely that formidable? His thoughts were interrupted by a scout who shared that Lu Bu, despite the odds, was heading back. Discussions brewed among the feudal lords. Tao Gian proposed a united front against Lu Bu, while Zhang Yang cautioned about underestimating the legendary warrior. But Gong Sun was eager to test Lu Bu himself. Leading his renowned white cavalry, he charged ahead. Elsewhere, Huaxiang signaled Lu Bu about Gong Sun's approaching elite cavalry. Famed in the northern regions, the white cavalry rode only robust white horses. They were a force to be reckoned with, having never met defeat. Huaxiang urged caution, but Lu Bu merely smirked. He'd seen greater challenges before. Without delay, he directed Gao Sun to position their archers. As a massive volley of arrows soared, Lu Bu charged alongside them. Gong Sun's army adeptly deflected the rain of arrows with their spears and halberds. As both leaders clashed, an explosive shockwave emanated. Mutual respect surfaced as they praised each other's weapons. The battlefield buzzed with energy. Both elite forces dove into the fray, and their leaders, Lu Bu and Gong Sun, locked in intense combat. Their weaponry clashed, resonating as symphony of war. Both changed tactics, advancing and attacking simultaneously. Quick on his feet, Gong Sun managed to slightly graze Lu Bu, a move that got the warrior pondering. The fight's momentum changed as Lu Bu began to realize the potency of Gong Sun's weapon. A swift jab had landed, and Lu Bu credited his initial heart strengthening for enduring the battle thus far. Deciding to take it up a notch, he activated his newfound liver-strengthening ability. Energy coursed through him, increasing his strength with every heartbeat. Gong Sun sensed a shift. Instead of going for the kill, Lu Bu seemed to be stretching out the fight, almost toying with him. The realization dawned upon Gong Sun that he was being humiliated, with Lu Bu pacing the battle to ensure Gong Sun's exhaustion and eventual defeat. The notion infuriated Gong Sun, igniting his pride. Opting for honor over disgrace, he lunged forward. However, the clash didn't go in his favor. Gong Sun's spear lay yards away, and he felt the cold touch of Lu Bu's weapon near his heart. Thoughts raced through Gong Sun's mind. Despite his noble birth, he faced prejudice due to his mother's background. This didn't deter him. Instead, he chose the rigorous life of a warrior. Memories of a significant siege at Guangji City, where they were trapped for over 200 days, played back. The dire circumstances led him to rally his troops with a promise: they become the revered White Cavalry. And with this vow, they burst from the castle gates, unleashing their wrath upon their adversaries. The White Cavalry's reputation for unmatched valor and determination was born from such relentless challenges. In the present, drawing his last reserves of strength, Gongsun attempted a final strike. But Lu Bu, far from an easy target, caught the blade effortlessly. Readying for a fatal strike on Gongsun, Lu Bu was suddenly interrupted by a fierce killing aura. Blocking the surprise attack, Lu Bu faced a new challenger, Zhang Fi, who mocked Lu Bu's reputed solo might. As the two warriors clashed, Lu Bu recognized that Zhang Fi, the Black Horseman, was no novice, but Zhang Fi's technique seemed unsustainable for a prolonged bout. Yet before Lu Bu could refocus, another warrior's presence made itself known. Barely dodging in time, he found himself facing another formidable opponent, Guan Yu, the Green Dragon. Guan Yu, impressed by Lu Bu's reflexes and formidable steed, decided to team up with Zhang Fei. Their combined might was palpable. The very air seemed charged. Bolstered, the duo attacked Lu Bu in tandem, looking to finish the skirmish quickly. Lu Bu, despite being outnumbered, relished the challenge, feeling invigorated by the thrill of facing two great warriors. The combat escalated, each side trading blows, but neither landing a decisive hit. The surrounding soldiers, sensing the magnitude of the battle before them, halted their skirmishes to witness the titanic clash. The trio's prowess was such that even the renowned Kung Sanu, watching from a distance, tried to measure the full range of their capabilities. Taking in the scene before him, Lu Bu couldn't help but compare the two brothers to powerful, raging dragons and tigers. Amidst the heat of the battle, another horseman approached Gongsun. Named Li Bai, he apologized for his tardiness. Intrigued, Gongsun inquired about the trio's presence. Li Bai candidly replied, revealing their united goal to topple the cruel rulers. He expressed his relief that his two sworn brothers had made it just in time. On the other end, Lu Bu, engrossed in combat with the two, gave them a backhanded compliment. He deemed them too skilled to merely be unknown foot soldiers and asked their names, if only to engrave them on their gravestones. Responding with palpable irritation, the brothers identified themselves. Suddenly, another challenger appeared behind Lu Bu, exuding a menacing intent. With his acute instincts, Lu Bu parried the newcomer's assault. The newcomer, despite his kind demeanor, held a trace of imperial aura. A quick exchange revealed that these brothers, though unique, had been biding their time under Gongsun's command. They conveyed their need for Lu Bu's head, alongside his horse and halberd, to solidify their reputation. Lu Bu coolly retorted, making it clear he had no intentions of handing over anything. As the confrontation ensued, a soldier from the battle rams successfully struck down a white horseman. The tides, however, quickly turned against him. The intensity of the skirmish had Lu Bu contemplating taking full advantage of his enhanced abilities, but seeing his men embroiled in savage combat made him reconsider. The longer he prolonged this duel, the higher the death toll would rise. Making a decision, Lu Bu unleashed the full potential of his heart and liver strengthening abilities. Wielding his weapon, he carved an escape route, vowing to continue the battle another day. Yelling out to his allies Huashan and Gaussian, Lu Bu pinpointed the enemy's vulnerability at their right flank. He commanded a concentrated charge through this breach. Far off, other warlords observed the battlefield. Kan Rong approached, seeking an update. Zheng Yang relayed the situation, mentioning Gongsun's confrontation with Lu Bu and the ongoing stalemate. Their discussion was interrupted with news of Gongsun's injury and Lu Bu's efforts to breach the northern defenses. Concerned over the might of Gongsun's renowned white cavalry faltering against Lu Bu, they strategized. Seizing this perceived vulnerability of Lu Bu, Zheng Yang dispatched General Muzin to finish him off. Not to be outdone, Kan Rong ordered another of his generals, Wu, to support Muzin. Blazing a trail for his army, Lu Bu urged his troops to maintain momentum and break through the enemy lines. Their progress was momentarily halted by two opposing generals who hurled insults at Lu Bu. However, their provocation met a swift end as Lu Bu dispatched them with a single powerful strike. Observing the demoralizing effect this had on the nearby platoon from Bing, Lu Bu addressed them, expressing his desire not to harm them and urging them to step back. Witnessing the might and determination of Lu Bu, the soldiers from Bing promptly made way, wanting to avoid a fate worse than death. Lu Bu and his warriors swiftly moved forward. Wu, although gravely injured and missing a hand, wasn't silent. He openly expressed his frustration, cursing the Bing soldiers for their unreliability. In Lu Bu's path were two approaching feudal lords, their armies threatening to converge and form an insurmountable barrier. Going straight or veering right would lead to an encirclement, but Lu Bu noticed a potential exit. To his left, Tao Jian's forces seemed the weakest. Without hesitation, Lu Bu directed his men leftward. Tao Jian, known for his tendency to avoid direct confrontations, felt a rush of fear. He had hoped to pick off stragglers from the sidelines, but now he faced a direct charge. Opting for caution, he instructed his troops to clear a path, letting Lu Bu pass unchallenged. As they moved ahead, Lu Bu smirked at Tao Jian, acknowledging the man's cunning. Soon, their path seemed free of obstacles. Checking on his forces, Lu Bu inquired about their numbers. Hua Sheng delivered somber news: a majority had fallen, with only a few from the Chilean cavalry remaining. Others, including the battle rams and the Chilean infantry, had been trapped and encircled by the Beihai cavalry. Despite the bleak situation, Lu Bu, demonstrating his leadership, told Hua Sheng to retreat with the survivors while he ventured back to the fray. However, his Chilean cavalry refused to abandon him, silently choosing to back him up. As they moved, Tao Gan saw an opportunity to earn prestige by finishing off the remnants of Lu Bu's infantry. But before he could act, news reached him: Lu Bu was storming back. The tide shifted again. Another lord, Bao Xin, observed Lu Bu's return. Recognizing an opportunity, he ordered his archers to let loose, even though their own allies were in the line of fire. When an advisor protested, pointing out the risk to their own coalition, Bao Xin saw it as a chance to weaken rival lords. Amidst this chaos, Lu Bu reached Ga's son, who was barely holding his ground. When questioned about his return, Lu Bu, with fiery passion, told Ga's son that his survival was crucial for the glory of the North Army. But as their conversation continued, Ga's son spotted a shower of arrows coming their way. In a sacrificial act, he shielded Lu Bu, mirroring a past incident in a simulation world. There, General Yan's daughter had similarly protected Lu Bu, assuring him of the importance of his survival. Echoing her words, Ga's son reiterated the sentiment. Meanwhile, Tao Gian and his forces found themselves in the line of fire, suffering heavy casualties. Inquiring about Ga's son's injuries, Hua Shen noted Ga's son's trembling voice, though he insisted the wound wasn't lethal. Lu Bu, amidst the pandemonium, expressed relief. Hua Xin hurried over to Lu Bu's side. Pausing for a moment, Lu Bu gestured towards a particular direction. "Change of plans," he said, determination clear in his eyes. "We're busting out from there, and on the way, we're taking out the general who thought he could rain arrows on us." He instructed Hu Sheng to assist Ga's son onto his iconic red horse. In a burst of raw emotion, Lu Bu activated his blood pump mode. Opting to go on foot, he was ready to harness the full power of the simulation system he had experienced. He concentrated his energy, launching himself with incredible speed towards Bao Xin. The sight was so astonishing that Bao Xin scrambled, ordering his troops to bring down this human missile. But Lu Bu, agile and fueled by fury, zigzagged his way through the rain of arrows, and before Bao Xin could fully process it, Lu Bu was upon him. Although the general pleaded for mercy, Lu Bu, without hesitation, split him in two. Bao Xin's troops surrounded Lu Bu, but he mowed through them effortlessly. Those who tried to flee from his wrath found little luck, as Lu Bu pursued and eradicated them. Elsewhere, Asket informed Ben Chu about the recent happenings. The 8 feudal lords had rallied outside Chang'an. Despite their combined might, Lu Bu managed to escape with a significant part of his army. Many soldiers, including the formidable white cavalry, fell. Bao Xin's entire force was wiped out, primarily due to Lu Bu's ferocity. Lu Bu was unstoppable, personally taking down numerous generals. Only Tao Jian's army was mostly unharmed, having avoided a direct confrontation with the warlord. Ben Chu speculated that Lu Bu must have reached his limits after such feats. Magnet advised letting Lu Bu be, as capturing Chang'an would now be much simpler. Atop Chang'an's walls, Hujin pondered the situation. He assumed Lu Bu had fallen to the coalition. He felt vulnerable and thus sent for Lisu. When they met, Lisu questioned Hujin's earlier decision to keep him away from Lu Bu. Hujin spun a tale of Lu Bu's supposed betrayal, implying that Lisu might have been in cahoots. Lisu retorted that if Lu Bu had truly defected, why was Hujin still alive? Hujin confessed to fabricating the story to alienate Lu Bu. He cautioned Lisu to tread carefully if he wanted to survive the impending invasion. Agreeing on a mutual goal, Lisu mentioned he'd need the tiger's seal to command the troops, which Hyujin approved. Internally, Lisu was seething. He had invested heavily in Changgao, only for Hyujin, a newcomer, to usurp his authority and even frame Lu Bu. Lisu feared for his life and contemplated fleeing. If he informed the Grand Master about Hyujin's actions, perhaps he'd be granted clemency. Soon after, armies from various feudal lords assembled outside Changgao. Liu Ba suggested that capturing the city would redeem their previous losses. Ta Gian, eager to initiate, had his men light catapult rocks aflame and, on his signal, hurled them at Changgao. Fiery rocks impacted buildings and weakened the walls. As the infantry, armed with rams and ladders, ready to breach, Hyujin frantically sought Lisu. However, his men could only report that Lisu was nowhere to be found, leading Hyujin to believe he might have fled. Hyujin could feel the weight of his mistakes. Clutching the walls of Changgao, he thought of how Lisu might be spilling their secrets to the Grand Master. A soldier approached, asking for defensive strategies. "Just surrender," Hyujin replied, defeated. Not long after, Gunjin led a troop of feudal lords into the city, marveling at how they had conquered a stronghold that had resisted them for over a year. As Hyujin braced himself, a sharp slap landed on his face. Zhang Fi, eyes blazing, demanded to know why Hyujin allowed Lu Bu to leave. Hyujin admitted he hoped the coalition army would dispose of Lu Bu, but never foresaw Lu Bu turning the situation in his favor. Liu Ba interjected, emphasizing that Lu Bu's diminished numbers meant he posed little threat now that they held Changgao. While Zhang Fi called for Hyujin's execution, Liu Ba urged restraint, highlighting the strategic importance of Hyujin's surrender. Hearing this, Hyujin played his trump card, his close association with the Grand Master and access to vital information. Gunjin, recognizing the potential advantage, ordered a banquet for Hyujin, suggesting they discuss matters over a meal. Elsewhere in a forest clearing, Lu Bu and his remaining men took a moment to recover. Ga's son reassured Lu Bu that his injuries were manageable, and upon their safe return, he gladly joined Lu Bu's command. Their forces had been heavily depleted, but 873 men, including cavalry and infantry, remained from their initial 3,000. Impressed by their resilience, Lu Bu planned their next move. He learned of a nearby town, Junior, which could serve as a recovery base. Though drained, Lu Bu ordered Hua Sheng to lead the cavalry to secure the town, emphasizing the need to only requisition supplies from the wealthy and to avoid unnecessary violence. Sitting alongside Ga's son, Lu Bu's thoughts swirled with plans of vengeance against the treacherous Hyujin. Ga's son, intrigued by Lu Bu's unexpected compassion towards the downtrodden, remarked on the disparity between the rumors and Lu Bu's true nature. Laughing, Lu Bu teased Ga's son with the idea of his many transformations across lifetimes. Their camaraderie was palpable. Their conversation took a mystical turn as Ga's son noted the otherworldly aura Lu Bu exuded during combat. As Lu Bu prepared to disclose something pivotal, a growl echoed. A magnificent tiger emerged, hungry and poised to attack. Ga's son admired its grandeur, but Lu Bu was resolute. "He's dinner." Weary from battle, Lu Bu drew his bow. As he released an arrow, another weapon, a halberd, simultaneously flew towards the predator. In the aftermath of the halberd embedding itself in the tiger's skull and the arrow sticking in its neck, Lu Bu's interest is piqued. Who threw that halberd? He wonders aloud. Surely a throw of such precision isn't the mark of just any ordinary person. The mysterious figure, radiating an unfamiliar aura, introduces himself as Dian Wei. He says he'd been tracking the tiger, intending it to be his meal for the coming days. Dian Wei's aura feels eerily similar to Lu Bu's, and Lu Bu can't shake off the feeling that this man's exceptional. Sensing an opportunity, Lu Bu offers him the slain tiger and, in an attempt to assert dominance, releases some of his aura, testing Dian Wei's reaction. Dian Wei, undeterred, introduces himself, recognizing the aura's power. Lu Bu, impressed by Dian Wei's demeanor, asks if he'd consider joining the army. Dian Wei hesitates, sharing that he's killed before and fears persecution. Laughing, Lu Bu assures him that in his army, past misdeeds don't matter. On the battlefield, he could even earn accolades for taking down enemies. The promise of freedom from his past and potential elevation in rank lures Dian Wei, in who then respectfully offers his prey, the tiger, to Lu Bu as a sign of allegiance. Lu Bu revels in this newfound loyalty. As dawn breaks, a scout reports that Hua Sheng has successfully taken Junior Town, a trek of about 8 hours away. but Dian Wei chimes in with news of a shortcut, cutting the journey in half. Meanwhile, the Grand Master fumes about Hujin's treachery, as reported by Lisu, who fled the city under the cloak of night. Shirong, one of his trusted generals, requests the honor of leading a campaign to reclaim Chang'an. The Grand Master agrees, choosing to spearhead the main army himself. Days later, near the walls of Chang'an, Meng receives an update from Gunsun. The city's defenses were too porous for a successful long-term hold, and they had to retreat. Gunsun requests permission to reconstruct his elite white cavalry. Reflecting on the war, Meng realizes that the heaviest casualties and contributions came from Gunsun and Sun Jian. He fears the coalition army might crumble if one of its pillars falters. Understanding Gunsun's predicament, he grants him permission to leave, knowing the news might demoralize others. Ben Chu queries Meng's decision. Meng confides in him about a messenger's report. Lu Bu was last seen heading toward Yike Pass, plundering the wealthy homes of Junyi. Ben Chu sees the dilemma. With the coalition forces locked in a standoff with the Grand Master, facing Lu Bu now seems improbable. Yet Meng suggests a potential strategy. If the Grand Master keeps tasting victory, learning of Lu Bu's existence might inflate their confidence, providing an opportunity for the coalition. Ben Chu nods, understanding the gravity of their situation. Still recuperating, Meng seeks advice, asking, "Do we have someone skilled enough for this?" Mengda reassures him, mentioning he's already sent 2 highly competent generals for the task. It appears Meng dispatched Bofu and his uncle Gongfu. Bofu, fueled by rage and desiring vengeance for his father's death, struggles to keep his composure. His uncle Gongfu, trying to calm Bofu, reminds him of the trap they've laid ahead for Lu Bu. A trap with no exit. Amidst their conversation, Bofu, unable to contain his anger, strikes a nearby rock. This rock tumbles down, stopping perilously close to Lu Bu's horse, inadvertently alerting him. With heightened senses, Lu Bu scans his environment, detecting the possibility of a trap. He warns Hua Shang of potential danger and urges discretion. Suggesting they organize their troops silently and backtrack, Bofu watches as Lu Bu retreats. Frustrated, Gongfu posits they may have been detected. Bofu, desperate to face Lu Bu, is cautioned by Gongfu not to play into their adversary's hands. In a heartbreaking moment, Bofu, tears streaming, expresses his profound need for revenge. Gongfu's mind drifts back to the haunting memory of Sun Jian's death by Lu Bu's arrow and the plea to safeguard their lineage. To assuage Bofu, Gongfu devises a plan where he confront Lu Bu directly, allowing Bofu to flank with their primary force. As they prepare, Lu Bu, retracing his steps with his army, suddenly stops. An arrow speeds towards him, which he skillfully deflects using his halberd. Gongfu, charging forward with his men, confronts Lu Bu, predicting the end of his reign of terror. Lu Bu smirks, his foes finally revealing themselves. Battle ensues, with Gongfu demonstrating an impressive prowess against Lu Bu's cavalry. However, understanding Lu Bu's might, Gongfu adopts a desperate strategy. Dousing himself in oil, he draws a line with the liquid, creating a path leading to his enemy. Throwing a bag filled with the same substance at Lu Bu, it splatters over the formidable warrior. As Gongfu lunges, Lu Bu parries the attack, injuring Gongfu in the process. In his final moments, Gongfu directs his men to shoot flaming arrows his way. Contact with the arrows ignites a catastrophic explosion due to the concealed gunpowder on Gongfu. Flames engulf Lu Bu, causing concern even among his loyal generals. Bofu, observing from a distance, grapples with the shock of his uncle's self-sacrifice. Despite the inferno, Lu Bu astonishingly survives, attributing his escape to his unmatched speed. Hua Shang, awestruck, believes he glimpsed lightning emanate from Lu Bu, though he chalks it up to a mere hallucination. Recognizing Gongfu, Lu Bu expresses unexpected admiration for the valiant warrior, ensuring he receives an honorable burial. High on a cliff, Bofu, still processing the surreal events, decides it's best to retreat despite his commander's objections. Bofu firmly believes his uncle's strategy was their best chance, hinting that perhaps there's more they don't yet understand. Understanding just how menacing Lu Bu truly was had become evident to everyone, especially after the sacrificial act of Gongfu. Bofu, reflecting on this, realized that seeking revenge impulsively wasn't wise. He felt that when the time was right, he'd take his chance to avenge his family. Gossen approached Lu Bu with an update. Sanjin's remaining forces were close by. Yet Lu Bu remained uninterested, as their main goal was reaching Iki Pass. Without delay, he ordered his troops to move. Days later, upon reaching Ek Pass, Wei Shu, Lu Bu's brother-in-law and the temporary city lord, greeted them warmly. Lu Bu inquired about the recent events. Wei Shu relayed how Hu Jin betrayed them to the coalition army, but fortunately, swift action was taken by Lisu, who updated the Grand Master. Consequently, Shu Rong was deployed against the coalition army, causing them to retreat. Now, however, Hu Jin was protecting the coalition army's granary. Listening intently, Lu Bu then turned his attention to his weary soldiers. Their spirits needed lifting, so he instructed Wei Shu to arrange a feast. Amidst the preparations, Dan Wei humorously lamented the lack of wine, recalling Lu Bu's strict rule against it to maintain discipline during battles. However, seeing the low spirits of his men, Lu Bu allowed an exception. The soldiers' mood soared instantly, with shouts of appreciation echoing throughout. As the festivities progressed, Lu Bu noticed Gaosen's reluctance to indulge. Upon asking, Gaosen voiced his concerns about the wine. Lu Bu confessed he'd initially imposed the wine ban to forge a disciplined army. But with time, he'd begun to question if certain measures were too harsh. Gaosen expressed gratitude for Lu Bu's insights, with Lu Bu light-heartedly advising him to enjoy the moment more. After a few days, a strategist named Wen Yu arrived at Ek Pass. Graded by Lu Bu, he shared that the Grand Master was relieved to hear of Lu Bu's safety. He introduced a new general, appointed by the Grand Master to permanently guard Ek Pass. Lu Bu, grateful, instructed Wei Shu to pass on his city lord duties to this new arrival. When Yu had more news, he praised Lu Bu for his incredible battle contributions, which had garnered attention from the empire's higher-ups. The Grand Master had sent a representative to Chang'an to discuss these feats with the emperor. Producing a box, Wen Yu revealed a seal inside, signifying Lu Bu's new titles, East Pacifying General and the Marquis of Pingtao. This granted him the power to establish his own administration. Lu Bu, surprised, remarked that these accolades arrived sooner than anticipated and questioned whether he was truly deserving. Wen Yu looked at him, waiting for his next words. Wen Yu looked puzzled. "What are you implying?" he asked Lu Bu. "Do you have intentions to defy the emperor's decree?" Lu Bu was quick to clarify. He felt that he needed to accomplish even more to truly deserve such honors. Wen Yu, understanding the underlying message, advised Lu Bu against seeking revenge on Hu Jin. After all, the Grand Master was in talks for a ceasefire with the coalition army. Prolonging the war might just give opportunists, like the White Wave bandits, an upper hand. Yet Lu Bu was determined. Hu Jin's actions caused the death of many of my men. If I back down now, my soldiers will lose faith in me, he argued. Turning to his troops, he sought their opinion. Their response was a unanimous call to arms. Wen Yu, in an attempt to deter them, displayed the Grand Master's seal, an emblem of authority, commanding the soldiers to halt. But Lu Bu pointed out that while the seal had power over his troops, it didn't control him. Noticing Ding Wei, who wasn't technically enlisted, Lu Bu extended an invitation to join his cause against Ao Granary. Without hesitation, Ding Wei accepted, eager for the combat that lay ahead. Despite Wen Yu's efforts to dissuade Lu Bu, he was unwavering. As Wen Yu tried to intervene, Ding Wei firmly told him to step aside, hinting at the carnage that awaited. A few days later, at Ao Granary, there was unrest among Hu Jin's troops. They confronted a general over ration distribution. Dismissed and insulted as barbarians, they simmered with anger. The situation took a dramatic turn when an arrow, shot from an unknown source, hit the general. As chaos ensued, a halberd flew, taking down a commander. Revealing themselves, Lu Bu and Ding Wei stood tall. Realizing the opportunity, Hu Jin's troops thought of capturing Lu Bu to earn a promotion. Ding Wei confidently asked Lu Bu to stand back and unleashed a flurry of blows against them, demonstrating his battle prowess. In the midst of battle, Lu Bu confronted two commanders from Hu Jin's side, both of whom he had promoted personally in the past. Without hesitation, they, along with their troops, denounced Hu Jin's weak leadership and pledged allegiance to Lu Bu. Meanwhile, Ding Wei expressed his disappointment as he had hoped to face off against Hu Jin's army himself. Elsewhere, an inebriated Hu Jin called for more wine, only to be startled by Lu Bu, who broke his wine jar with a swift move. Fear was evident in Hu Jin's eyes. Lu Bu wasted no time, condemning Hu Jin for his treachery and the loss of numerous lives. As Hu Jin pleaded for mercy, Lu Bu proposed a challenge. He would count to 10, and if Hu Jin could escape the ruin within that time. Wen Yu eyed Lu Bu skeptically. "So if Hu Jin manages to escape this room while you count to 10, And you don't use your hands, he's free. He wanted to clarify. Lu Bu, smirking, assured him that his word was as good as gold. The moment the challenge was accepted, Hyujin bolted, hoping to seize this lifeline. Lu Bu started counting. By the fourth count, rather than using his hands, Lu Bu masterfully kicked his halberd in Hyujin's direction, severing his legs. The pain was intense, but the desperate Hyujin began to crawl. To his shock, he made it outside the room by the count of 9. But his relief was short-lived. Lu Bu materialized in front of him almost instantly, expressing his disappointment. As Hyujin accused Lu Bu of deception, Lu Bu nodded, suggesting Hyujin should air his grievances in the underworld. With a wave of his hand, Lu Bu's men carried out his grim order, reducing Hyujin to mere fragments.